Today we're diving into a really powerful story from the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Leon Lederman. And it's not just a story about physics, it's about how we can sometimes lose our sense of wonder, and more importantly, how we can find it again when we least expect it.
So let's set the scene. The year is 1946. Leon Lederman has just come back from serving in World War II. And as he says here, even when you're on the winning side, just getting back to quote-unquote normal is incredibly hard. This really gives you a sense of where his head was at. He gets back and enrolls in graduate school for physics at Columbia University. But that first year back, wow, he said it was one of the worst he can remember. Instead of feeling inspired, he just felt completely and totally discouraged by the whole academic scene. And a big part of the problem was this. Get this. His two main professors were both future Nobel laureates, so you'd think he'd be in heaven, right? Wrong. On one hand, you had I. Rabi, who was super charismatic, but his lectures were just a confusing, incoherent mess. On the other hand, you had Willis Lamb, who was crystal clear, but his voice was so monotone it would literally put the class to sleep. Talk about frustrating. So it's really no surprise that he started having a major crisis of confidence. I mean, he hadn't cracked a textbook in over 3 years because of the war, and now this was his welcome back. He was seriously starting to think, man, did I make a huge mistake switching into physics? But then, the story takes a fantastic turn. Lederman gets a research position building a new instrument for what was then the brand new, super exciting field of high-energy physics. And this is where a chance encounter would, well, pretty much change everything for him. So what was he building? A Wilson cloud chamber. The easiest way to think about it is like this. It's a special little box that makes the invisible visible. It lets you see the secret trails left behind by these impossibly tiny subatomic particles. It's almost like seeing the contrails from a jet, but for the fundamental building blocks of our universe.
Okay, so Lederman comes back to his lab one day, and there's a guy mopping the floor, singing opera at the top of his lungs. The man sees him and just belts out, "Bernardini!" Lederman, thinking, oh, must be the new janitor, just kind of casually says, "Yeah, hi, just, be careful with the water around all those wires." It wasn't until about 20 minutes later that he realized his mistake. Yeah, turns out that wasn't the janitor. It was Gilberto Bernardini, a really distinguished visiting professor all the way from Rome. His English was, well, let's just say it was creative. He'd basically learned it from reading physics papers. But despite everything he'd been through during the war himself, Bernardini had this infectious, joyful energy that just immediately started to cut through Lederman's gloom.
And this is where the real lesson begins. A lesson that wasn't just about physics, but about rediscovering a sense of pure, unadulterated wonder. So, Lederman's cloud chamber, it was a total dud. It was just filling up with this thick, useless smoke. Bernardini comes over, takes one look, points to this little radioactive needle inside and just asks, "What's that?" Lederman tells him it's the source. Bernardini suggests taking it out. The second he does, poof! The smoke clears, and these beautiful, perfect little particle tracks appear. Bernardini was so thrilled he literally started dancing with joy. So their partnership was off to a great start. A bit later, they built another gadget called a proportional counter. It's basically a simple particle detector, nothing more than a brass tube and a thin wire, designed to hear particles zip by and show them as little electronic pulses on a screen. They're both staring at this oscilloscope screen, waiting. And then suddenly, blip, a pulse appears. And then another, and Bernardini just erupts with this shout of pure delight, "Is it counting? It's counting!" This moment was just so full of excitement that Bernardini, who was a smaller guy, actually picked Lederman up and danced him around the lab. Can you imagine? This wasn't the stuffy, serious academic world Lederman had been stuck in. This was raw, unfiltered joy. So what was the big deal? Why all the dancing? Bernardini explained it to him. They were seeing cosmic rays. These little blips on their screen were particles from stars that had exploded billions of miles away, that had traveled across the cosmos and just happened to wander into their little brass cylinder on the 10th floor of a building in New York City.
Fantastico! That was Bernardini's word. And the amazing thing was, he'd seen this happen thousands of times before, but he never lost that sense of awe, that deep wonder at the fact that they could connect with the universe from a tabletop experiment.
And this whole experience, this is what taught Lederman a profound lesson, one that would completely redefine the next 40 years of his career.
Lederman realized that so many scientists are on this long, hard grind. They suffer through years of frustration, all chasing that one big, life-changing discovery.
But as Bernardini showed him, that's just not a life. You can't put all your joy into a single basket that's way off in the future.
What Bernardini taught him was that the joy has to be daily. It's right there in the little things. It's in the challenge of building something and that thrill you get when it finally works. It's in the fun of just talking with your colleagues, of learning something new every day. And most of all, never losing that sense of wonder that our universe, as complex as it is, can actually make sense. For Leon Lederman, the man who would go on to win the Nobel Prize, this was it. Gilberto Bernardini, the guy he mistook for the janitor, was his turning point. He's the one who relit that fire and taught him how to find joy not just at the finish line, but in every single step of the journey.
And that kind of leaves us with a question for ourselves, doesn't it? In our own lives, in our own work, with all the daily frustrations we deal with, where are our fantastico moments? Where do you find your daily sense of wonder?